Hi guys, welcome back to Matt Chat. This is episode number 24, covering one of the best action strategy science fiction titles of all time, Star Control 2, the ur-quan Masters.
It is the year 2155. The people of Earth now travel between the stars. Following the sad lessons of the Little War, a unified Earth knew a century of golden peace and prosperity. A glorious dream dashed by the arrival of a hostile armada. Earth and her partners in the Alliance of Free Stars faced a monstrous adversary. The predatory ur-quan, and its hierarchy of battle thralls. There were many great battles, yet Earth was losing. But then, far across space, an amazing discovery was made, deep beneath the surface of an alien world. An underground city, filled with the technological wonders of the precursors, an ancient and powerful race who vanished 1,000 centuries ago. But the ur-quan swept through the nearby stars, stranding our scientific team here. 20 years have passed. We have continued our research. We now know what the precursors built here. It is a factory for building starships. But there are only enough materials to build the skeleton of one vessel. Yet that must be enough. Because you must pilot the vessel and return to Earth. And if the war with the ur-quan still rages, fight for Earth and the Alliance as well as you can.
Star Control 2, developed by a company named Toys for Bob and published by Accolade, is a game with a lot of history, and it'll take a little while to cover some of that history, but I think it's worth the time. I think the earliest roots of this game go back to one of the earliest computer games ever designed, and that is, of course, Spacewar, a game developed by Slug Russell and some of his colleagues at MIT way back in 1962. That game was very simple, but actually quite advanced for the time. Had two rocket ships fighting around the gravity well and shooting each other. We're going to see that, of course, in Star Control. But we also find an important root in a role-playing system, a tabletop role-playing system called Traveler by Game Designers Workshop. Now, this was released right around the time that Dungeons & Dragons was getting popular, but it's very different. Of course, in some ways similar, but also very different. In that, of course, it does have a science fiction theme, and there are elements of economics and space warfare, upgrading your ships and crew members and so on, that we'll see in many later computer games. We could talk about Eduware's space game for the Apple II, and later on Empire. They got into a little trouble with the Game Designers Workshop over some of the copyrights. But even in those early games, which were released in the late 70s, we already see a lot of the elements in place that'll show up, of course, in Omnitron's universe later on, and then finally in Elite and other games. I also want to mention in passing another brilliant game from 1986 called Starflight. And Starflight, as you will see when we get into Star Control 2, is obviously an inspiration for Star Control 2. Here we have the upgrading the ships, story elements, going to different planets and mining and trading. So a lot of the same elements, even a very primitive version we might think of the combat that will show up in Star Control 2. Now just a note though about Star Control 1, that game was released in 1990, again by Toys for Bob. And that is also a fun game. It was fairly successful, ported to a wide variety of platforms, including the Amiga and the Commodore 64. Mostly, though, it was a DOS hit. And while there was scenarios you could play, I think what most people liked about this game was, of course, the multiplayer dogfights, which obviously harkened back to Spacewar. And there's all different melee modes, all these different ships you can play. Each has a special power in addition to a main power and their own strengths and weaknesses, turning speeds, and so on. A lot of different variables at play here. There's a lot of fun. I know I had a lot of fun playing this with my neighbor way back in the early 90s. But Star Control 2 represented a big departure from this style of gameplay. There was a dogfight melee multiplayer mode available, but that wasn't the big draw at this point. The big draw was this very rich story that they built around the game. Before we get started, a quick word about me. My name is Matt Barton. I am the author of Dungeons and Desktops, a book about computer role-playing games, and co-author of Vintage Games, a book that covers a wide assortment of video games from all eras and all platforms. If you like this video, please comment on it, rate it. I'd love to hear from you. All right, then. Without further ado, let's play Star Control 2. When the game starts, you have arrived in the Sol system, our solar system, with this bizarre alien ship and really no idea what's happened to Earth. Why haven't they responded to any of your communication signals or anything? So what we're going to find here is that Earth has been enslaved by the ur-quan, and there's a sort of giant shield around it. But there is a space station that is not under the shield that we'll be able to communicate with and start our plans for a resistance force. As you can probably tell, this ship is affected by inertia and the gravity of these planets, so it can be a little tricky learning how to maneuver. What's happened here is that I've encountered a probe of the ur-quan, and they're telling me that the planet has been enslaved and that basically I need to hang around until the ur-quan get there to arrest or imprison me. That's probably not going to happen. After you've dealt with the probe, then you can approach the station and see what's going on there. At first they're not going to trust you, but the station will prove to be very important. This is where you'll be getting your upgrades. You can refuel here. You can drop off the mineral deposits that you pick up on planets. You can get a lot of upgrades, so it's very important to come here and figure out what needs to be done. Basically what we're going to start off with is doing some, I have to get some radioactives to power up the station. The people on it are just about dead. And then we'll need to start exploring the solar system and gathering resources. I'm skipping ahead here to Mercury, where the commander told me I could find some radioactives. And the first order of business when you arrive at a planet or a moon is to scan it for signs of life, signs of minerals, or energy deposits, energy generators, any evidence of intelligent life. And this is very tricky. You got these little landers, and they're very fragile. You can be caught in an earthquake, you can be burned, struck by lightning, or crushed by aliens. It's a very difficult part of the game, but it's also very necessary because you need to collect a lot of minerals and other elements from these planets to be able to upgrade your ship and build your fleet. Skipping ahead here a little bit so you can see just how much this ship can be upgraded. Actually, the upgrades at the beginning of the game aren't complete. You will encounter different alien races and get new technologies that you can use to upgrade your ship still further. And also, I can only recruit very basic ships, the sort of Star Trek Enterprise looking thing there, at the beginning of the game, but as you can see there, I have managed to recruit another alien species to join me. And here is the alien in question, that little atomic looking ship there. This is a Spathy captain named Whiffo. I just wanted to put this in just so you could get some idea of the humor in this game and the wacky charm of the aliens you meet. You never really know what to expect. This is a pretty fun, zany game. It doesn't take itself very seriously. I think that's one of the reasons why it's remained such a classic. Of course, not all of the aliens that you meet will be friendly. In fact, you will be fighting quite a lot in this game. And again, it's important to, whenever possible, to match up a ship of yours that will have an advantage over the enemy. If you got more range, perhaps, or more maneuverability, it can make a huge difference. And that's all for this week's Match Chat. But remember, don't squish the poot worm.